For now, I'm going to hide the lower jaw by clicking on the little eye symbol next to bottom jaw. You can see that the antagonist impressions are visible on this type of splint. So the splint design is also adapted to the opposing jaw. I also have the option here of hiding the splint and showing the bottom jaw if I want. I also have the option to adjust the jaw opening again at this step. The right menu also gives me the option to change the type of splint. I'm going to change the type from occlusal to general. In this case, general means that the parameters are the same as for a deep drawn splint. The minimum material thickness is therefore 15 millimeters throughout. By changing the splint type, we've actually seen on screen how the splint changes. I can undo this change via the undo button. I'm going to set it back to occlusal again and click on Apply Settings. After a short processing time, we can see how our splint changes back. I'm going to make the bottom jaw visible again to check whether the occlusal thickness is sufficient. In this case it is sufficient, which I know by looking at the opposite jaw from below. If I can't see any green pushing through, I know that the splint is sufficient. When I'm satisfied here, I can move on to the next step, which is the penultimate step in the workflow, where I can work on detailing the shaping of the splint surface. The next step is focused on the actual design. I'm going to hide the bottom jaw so that we have a better view of the splint. The colors you see now represent the distance to the antagonist. The areas of the occlusal surface that are shown in purple have contact areas, and the areas in blue don't have contact. If red was present here, it would indicate an obstacle or intrusion. The menu item antagonist distance allows me to see the material thickness. If I want to click on Adjust Now, this is displayed. There are now several areas on our splint that are marked in yellow. If there are only a few, like here on the edge, this doesn't matter. It's only when that they are in the bite zones that these have to be taken into account. With another click on material thickness, I can hide this again. Coming back to the colors, we have the option of using the articulator again. I'm deliberately leaving the bottom jaw hidden. Even if it isn't shown, it will still follow the movements. I'm now going to change the protrusion, and you can see how the colors change. You can see exactly which points are being moved over, and that there is a red spot on the occlusion. We now have the option to work on this as it indicates an obstruction in the protrusion. The same, of course, applies to the laterotrusion. With the help of various tools available, we have the option of adjusting the laterotrusive path. Now I'll introduce the tools that are available for this. The first is the Add Material tool. With the radius slider, I can change the size of the tool with the slider below. I can also change the strength of the tool. This changes how much material is added when you click. I've set both to 100%, and I'm now going to build up material by holding down the left mouse button. Let me change the perspective so you can see. A buildup of material is visible, and the spot is deep red, because here we now have a substantial intrusion of the bottom jaw. I'll show you for a moment. This obviously has a massive impact on the occlusion, and we don't need this buildup. So I'm going to click Undo to remove it, rather than manually removing it. The other tool is the Remove Material tool. Here, I'll set the strength to 100% and remove material by clicking with the left mouse button. You can now see that there's a significant amount of material missing in this section. This can also be undone by clicking the Undo button. And if I change my mind, I can click the Redo button. But to demonstrate the Smooth Material tool, I'm going to leave this hole. Again, I'm setting the radius and strength to 100% so I can show you the tool quickly. As I use the tool, you can see that it's clearly rounding and smoothing this sharp edge so that we won't have such sharp transitions when we've finished. I'm now going to undo these steps. I think you can clearly see the effect of the smoothing tool as I click back and forth. Now we're going back to our original splint as we want it to be. So we only need these static impressions. We can move on to the final step.